Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Monotui, coach of the Baltimore Orbeetles, and today we're going to be going over our APA. I don't even know what the hell season this is, so I'll find that out later, like maybe season 8, something along those lines. Our APA draft analysis. This is going to be my first season in the APA, but if you don't know me, I'm very experienced in draft league format. Been playing since pretty much the beginning of Gen 6. Been part of the PPL. Some of you might remember me from the GBA, and some various other leagues like NPL, TBU, whatever, what have you. And today we're going to be going over our APA draft. It's been a little while since I've been a part of an official league. You know, I've been doing a little bit of NPL on Showdown, which I might upload at some point. Probably not because I'm a piece of shit. But, you know, been doing some NPL. Also been doing a little bit of a Wi-Fi league. And it's been pretty fun. But this is going to be my first, like, actual big, like, kind of competitive league that I'm going to be participating in probably over a year and a half. Basically since the last time that I played in the GBA. But either way, let's get into the team real quick. So, as you can see, this is going to be a little bit of a different style than my other draft analyses. Usually I do the mons one by one, but now you're going to have the full team on screen, kind of like what's being done on the draft stream over at, if you want to watch the VOD, it should be over at twitch.tv/PokeMMD. But for my analysis, here is the entirety of the team that we drafted. Our G-Max is Melmetal, which is nuts. We got Clefable, Dracozolt, Gigalith, Inteleon, Hitmonchan, Raboot, Mandibuzz, Roserade, Sandaconda, and Haunter. So my initial thoughts on this draft is that this is definitely like the fattest team that I've ever drafted. Like pretty much everything here has the option to be run bulky outside of maybe like Haunter and Inteleon. Even like Raboot, it's not going to be run bulky more often than not, but you know, I can run a Violet with like Will-O-Wisp and U-Turn or something along those lines. Even Roserade can be run kind of bulky as a switch into electrics or water types. Hitmonchan's pretty bulky with the AV. Dracozolt is pretty naturally bulky, even though I'm going to be running that thing pretty offensively. This whole team was kind of based around my first three, being G-Max, Melmetal, Clefable, and Dracozolt as my Steel Fairy Dragon Core. That three is disgusting. G-Max Melmetal, I feel like is never going to get OHKO'd. I'm tempted to say like it's never going to die, but obviously I don't think that's going to happen. I think at some point somebody will be able to take it out. But I'm interested to see how good G-Max Melmetal is in draft. Obviously, it doesn't get access to an item. We have to. One of the rules of APA is that your G-Max Mon has to hold like a Pokeball or some other useless item. So I'm limited a little bit as to what I can do with it. Like obviously, I can't run Choice Band, I can't run AV to boost my special defense. But once I G-Max and I double my already massive HP stat, I don't think not having an item is going to matter all that much because it's Spadef at base 65 isn't the best, but again, with its huge HP stat, it's going to be able to tank whatever is going to be thrown at me. Like, I'm going to be tanking Focus Blast, Close Combats, no problem. Plus, I do have access to Max Quake, which is going to boost my Spadef even further. Its G-Max move is, I don't think it's as good as Double Iron Bash. It's like what Torment does. Your opponent can't use the same move twice. But either way, that could still be kind of useful in some niche situations. And again, I'm going to be bulky as hell. I'm going to be strong as hell. It gets access to Explosion, so I can hit things like Rotom Wash pretty hard with a Max Strike, which will be pretty nice. I don't have to G-Max my Pokemon, so if I want to just go for a Double Iron Bash, or for like a Body Press or something along those lines, I absolutely can. Once I'm G-Maxed as well, I can go for something like a Max Knuckle and boost my own attack, in addition to potentially boosting one of my defenses, which is going to be really nice. Like, I have a hard time seeing how this thing's going to die. Plus, I have Wish Support from Clefable, which is just one of the many things Clefable can do. One of the many things that Clefable can do, I should say. It's a great Stealth Rocker, T-Wave Spreader. It's been running a lot of offensive sets this gen, which is definitely something I can take advantage of with a little bit of speed. You know, Life Orb Magic Guard has a great move pool, and Moonblast, Fire Blast, Thunderbolt, whatever else. Obviously, reliable recovery in Soft Boiled, Moonlight if I'm running the Unaware set, and Wish, which is going to be really useful. It's a Clefable. It's a fat pink thing. It's going to support the team really well. It's going to be able to potentially Calm Mind up and sweep various different teams. If they don't have a great Steel or a good Poison type, I can kind of just run like Calm Mind, Soft Boiled, Thunder Wave, Moonblast, and just 6-0 a team with that. Gets access to Stored Power. Gets access to Cosmic Power. Like, Clefable's just an absolute monster. And standing next to it, you guys know I love me some Dracozolt. And with this draft, we're allowed to use the hidden ability for Dracozolt. So I'll be able to use Sand Rush, which is why you see a Gigalith there that was picked kind of early, because that's going to give sand support to my Dracozolt, which is going to give it +2 speed. Obviously, it's going to double its speed, and I'll be able to outspeed pretty much everything and smack them with Bolt Beaks, which is going to be really nice. What's also nice about that is I won't have to risk missing because of Hustle, anything along those lines. Obviously, I'll be running Hustle throughout the season, I'm sure. Life Orb or Bandit or Scarf or whatever I decide to run, it's still going to hit really, really hard. I'm sorry if you hear ESPN going off in the background. Let me mute my phone. There we go. Dracozolt, really, really nice. Pretty good move pool as well. You know, gets access to Low Kick, Fire Fang, Earthquake. Obviously, Dragon Electric Stab is really nice as well. I have moves to hit pretty much everything, you know? And if I'm able to catch like their bulky grass type, like something like a Ferrothorn, for example, on the switch in with a Fire Fang, that's going to really open up the doors for a Bolt Beak sweep. Obviously, I have to deal with opposing ground types, which could potentially be a problem, but my team deals with ground types pretty well. Obviously, I have the Inteleon, as you can see, the Mandibuzz, the Roserade. So I'm pretty excited to use Dracozolt in another draft, especially now that I have access to Sand. Speaking of the Sand Setter, Gigalith I feel like is one of the more underrated Pokemon basically in the entirety of Pokemon. Like, it's great in the lower tiers. It's so incredibly strong with like base 135 attack. It has a great move pool with like Stone Edge, Superpower, Earthquake, Heavy Slam, things along those lines. It's a very reliable rocker. This is another one of those Pokemon that you're pretty much never going to kill in one shot. The Sand Boost, its Spadef, its Fizz Def is already crazy. It gets access to Body Press now. Is a very good, reliable fighting move if I'm running like a Fizz Def variant. And like I said, it just hits insanely hard. Like, I can run Choice Band and probably 2 KO entire enemy teams with Stone Edge plus Earthquake or something along those lines. It's a crazy Pokemon. Really happy to have it. Very reliable stealth rocker. It and Clefable are my only two. Oh no, I have Sandaconda as well. I have 2 Rock Setters in 3 Rock Setters in Clefable, Gigalith, and Sandaconda. Gigalith, probably the most reliable Rock Setter. It's the one that's least likely to get O-Code. It's threatened like the least by pretty much everything. If my opponent does have a good fighting type, I do have things like Clefable and Haunter that I can go into, even Mandibuzz to an extent. So yeah, that's Gigalith. It's a monster. Love it. I'm really excited to use it. Then, for our next tier 3, we have Inteleon. And this is another mon I feel like is pretty underrated in the draft right now. People know... people know how good Torrent Greninja was in draft previously. Obviously, Greninja is currently not available due to the dex being a little bit limited at the moment. I forget if it's coming back later, but... Torrent Greninja ended up being a very solid Pokemon in Draft League because it has a great move pool, even without getting stabbed on everything. Like, it has a great speed tier, it still has, like I said, that great move pool that can 2-hit KO various different things. Had access to U-Turn, had access to Priority, which is really nice. Inteleon is kind of similar. I don't think it's quite as good as Greninja, just because Greninja had that extra Dark Stab, which is really nice, but Inteleon, still a fast Pokemon, very strong. I believe at base 110 special attack, 120 special attack, something along those lines. And what's really nice about it, similarly to Greninja, is it has U-turn so that it can get initiative versus its switch outs. So, for example, my opponent's got something like a Vaporeon or a Seismitoad coming in. I click U-turn as they send it in, and if it's a Vaporeon, I can go right out into my Dracozolt. If it's either of them, I can go out into my Roserade or something along those lines. Roserade gives me initiative with entry hazards like Spike or T-Spike versus the bulky water, and Dracozolt just gives me an immediate offensive threat that they cannot take lightly and whatnot. If it's a Seismitoad as well, they're not going to have recovery, so if I have Spikes up and I'm going to be able to continuously chip away at them, that's going to be really nice for the Dracozolt sweep later. Also going to be really nice for the G-Max Melmetal destruction later on, you know? They won't be able to switch into their Seismitoad as often, which is going to be a big goal for me, just so that something like Melmetal can absolutely run a train on their team. So, there's Inteleon. It's also the fastest thing on my team. I wanted something at a good fast speed tier that's more than likely going to outspeed whatever my opponent has. Hopefully, it'll be able to outspeed pretty much everything outside of, obviously, things like Dragapult, Jolteon, Zeraora, whatever else. But Inteleon, cool Pokemon, excited to use it. Then for our tier 4, as you can see, we picked up a Hitmonchan, which I'm very experienced in using, and I've always liked it. I've always thought this was also like an underrated pick in draft. It has a great move pool, it's not terribly slow, and it's surprisingly strong, like Life Orb, Close Combat, Drain Punch, Mach Punch, Bullet Punch, whatever else, hits surprisingly hard. And it really got an unnoticed buff this generation with the Rapid Spin buff, because not only is it a decent hazard remover, it has ways to hit various different ghost types on the switch in instead of going for a Rapid Spin, and it can maybe scare some ghost types from coming in. But getting that +1 speed on a Hitmonchan can be absolutely huge. You're then a very powerful fighting type at +1 speed. Your base 76 speed, you hit like 276 or something at level 100. and you're going to be able to hit things extremely, extremely hard. You're going to more than likely outspeed them. Even if you don't, you still have access to that Mach Punch. You're more than likely your opponent's going to more than likely depend on a Choice Scarf mod to be able to knock it out, and that's just really nice for Hitmonchan. Like, that Rapid Spin buff, I feel like is going to come in big, at least in like 1 or 2 of my games this season. I'm a big Hitmonchan fan, and hopefully I'll be able to put in some good work with it. Now, the next mon that we got, or the next mon in the tier list, the tier 5, and I cannot believe this mon is tier 5, is going to be Reboot. Obviously, the pre-evolution of Cinderace, it does not get access to Pyro Ball or Court Change, or some of the things that make Cinderace really cool, but we are allowing Libero, or Libero, or however you want to pronounce it, on Reboot, which is going to make this thing incredible. This thing is going to have, obviously, Stab Flare Blitz, Stab U-Turn, Stab Sucker Punch, Stab Gunk Shot. There are going to be so many different options for this thing to run. Like I said earlier, if I wanted to, I could run something like an Eviolite sub Willow variant, if I really wanted to. I believe this gets access to Super Fang. Hopefully I'm not crazy and talking out of my ass, but that could be a pretty nice set to run on it. I believe it also gets access to Taunt, which could be a nice little stall breaker set. And again, even though it doesn't get access to Pyro Ball, which is obviously really nice so I don't take the recoil, Flare Blitz is equally as strong, and I'll be able to do a lot of damage. If I'm running an offensive set, I don't really care about the damage onto this because it's very frail anyway. But either way, it's got a pretty good speed tier, it's decently strong, and having Stab on everything, I think this is going to be a better version of what Frogadier was, which was very valuable in previous generations. If you had a Frogadier, you definitely had to be careful of it because of the move pool it had and the speed and decent amount of power it had. I feel like Reboot is going to be a better version of that, and obviously a fire type, so this will help versus opposing steel types that maybe Melmetal doesn't want to deal with, or things that maybe Clefable doesn't want to deal with. So, excited to use Reboot. Then, for the next part of our draft, as you can see, the first free pick that we ended up picking up was Mandibuzz, and Mandibuzz has always been a pretty good Pokemon. It's been a very reliable defogger. Foul Play and Knockoff are really nice. It can gain initiative with U-Turn. It also always had access to Toxic, which is really nice. And Taunt, and it's a relatively fast Taunt user. Could be a potential stall breaker against slower defensive Pokemon. But Mandibuzz in previous generations, this thing's biggest weakness were entry hazards like Stealth Rock. Taking that 25% on switch-in meant that it was more than likely to get KO'd by a lot of different attacks that came in. Or at the very least, it would take the 25% due to rocks, it would get U-turned out on, take another 10%, and then your opponent would bring in something that would force it out. So that when it comes back in, it's going to be even lower and easier to kill. But this generation, heavy-duty boots exists, and so that is not really a problem for Mandibuzz. And Mandibuzz is bulky enough to the point where it doesn't necessarily need leftovers to be able to survive certain hits, like maybe something like Clefable. It's bulky enough where it can take weaker electric moves, it can take weaker ice moves, or things along those lines. It's very difficult to OHKO. It's very good at being able to get defogs off. It's very good at gaining initiative. Knocking off items is going to be so nice, because obviously there's no Megas to switch into a knockoff anymore. You could maybe switch in your G-Max Pokemon, but either way, if you're forced to G-Max early, that's kind of nice for you for the rest of the game. Either way, Mandibuzz, super great mon. It fits the team very well. I was a little bit ground weak at this point. I was actually pretty ground weak at this point, as you can see, but obviously it synergizes with Melmetal very well. Mandibuzz being obviously immune to the Earthquake that Melmetal, Dracozolt, Gigalith don't like. Even Hitmonchan and Inteleon are not great at switching into Earthquake, so Mandibuzz, great member of the team. My second hazard remover as well. You got Hitmonchan with the spin, and you got Mandibuzz with the defog. That's a nice little combo right there. And it just complements the rest of my team really nicely, especially the other pieces of disgusting fat garbage that I have on this team. So that's Mandibuzz. Then for our next free pick, we're bringing back another familiar face. I've had this in various drafts, including a GBA draft a while ago, Roserade. So Roserade has been kind of nerfed in a few different ways. It no longer, obviously Hidden Power is no longer a move in Generation 8, and this thing would love to take advantage of Technician Hidden Power. You run a Technician Hidden Power, you have this fire move with the same strength as an unstabbed Flamethrower, which was always very nice. And there isn't much of a point to run Technician anymore. Like, you could run Magical Leaf, but you'd rather just run Energy Ball for the secondary effect, or you'd rather run Leaf Storm for the extra power, or Giga Drain for the healing. But Roserade is still a good Pokemon. It does get access to Spike and Toxic Spike, which are very useful. It's a great Scald switch in. With Natural Cure, I'll be able to switch in a Scald. Even if I get burnt, I can just switch out and get rid of it. I can absorb a T-Wave, switch out, and then get rid of it. It can also spread Paralysis itself with Sunspore. It can also spread Sleep with Sleep Powder, obviously. It's a very good speed tier for this generation. Base 90 is pretty solid for this gen. Makes for a good Scarf or Specs user or Life Orb user if I want to run it offensively. I can run it defensively with like Leech Seed, Synthesis, Spike, something along those lines. Very versatile Pokemon. Very physically frail, but I do have a lot of various things on my team with very good physical bulk that can, you know, take part in it, you know. If there's a Brave Bird coming, I can go into my Gigalith and eat it very well. And it's also a good Ice Switch in, which I'm not particularly weak to, but wait, did I say Roserade is a good Ice Switch in? Never mind. Don't ignore me. I'm high. I'm not actually. Don't do drugs, kids. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Alright. Roserade, good. Roserade's a good boy. Very excited to be using it again. Even with the nerfs to, obviously, no more hidden power, I think it's going to be very effective for the team. Next up, the final new Pokemon of my team. I wanted to draft a few different new Pokemon just because it's new toy syndrome, plus, you know, it's fun. It's fun to try out new and exciting different Pokemon, especially ones you don't see all that often, like Sandaconda. So, for one, Sandaconda gives me a ground type, which obviously I needed. I want that immunity to Volt Switch and whatnot. Dracozolt can do it with Volt Absorb, but I feel like that's the weakest of its three abilities. I'd rather be running Hustle if I want to hit things really hard, or obviously Sand Rush if I'm bringing Sand. Speaking of Sand Rush, Sandaconda has access to Sand Spit, so if I'm not bringing Gigalith, but I still want to be getting at the sand, I can send in Sandaconda to take a U-turn or something, you know, something along those lines. Or if I, you know, want to sack it just to get up the sand, I can send it into an attack, let it take the damage or die or whatever, get up the sand, and then send in my Dracozolt to potentially start sweeping. Sandaconda, also reliable rocker, which is very nice. It's very bulky, has a great physical bulk, and you can run it, especially defensive as well, to take on electric types a little bit better. Also can boost its physical defense and physical attack with Coil, which is pretty nice. Shed Skin is also a very viable ability on it. It gives it semi-reliable recovery and rest. You know, obviously it's not guaranteed that you'll wake up immediately, but there's a good chance you can rest and within 0 or 1 turns you'll wake up, and you'll have a fully healthy Sandaconda, which would be fantastic. Something else I wanted to mention with my team is that there's so many different things that have access to a paralyzing move. So like Melmetal, Clefable, both have T-Wave. Dracozolt gets T-Wave, but there's a good chance I'm not going to be running it on Dracozolt. Then obviously Sandaconda has Glare, which is also very, very nice, you know? Like I said earlier, ground types are one of the biggest checks to Dracozolt, and if they send it in on my Sandaconda and get glared, that could be kind of nice, you know? I go for a Dragon Claw onto it, get some nice chip, they get full parried as I switch out into something else, so they have no ability to get their recovery off, or they can't set up their rocks or whatever's happening. Sandaconda, I feel like, just supports this team really nicely, you know? Paralysis is super important for this team, just in general, because it's super AIDS and stupid, and paralysis wins you games, just straight up, you know, if your opponent gets paralyzed 2 or 3 times in a row, which I'm sure we are all experienced with, you can just straight up win the game. But paralysis is also really nice for things like Hitmonchan that are kind of slow, that could potentially wall break with paralysis up. Things like Melmetal is huge, because obviously it's very slow. I can run a little bit of speed on it to outspeed various different things when they are paralyzed. Plus, Melmetal has access to Double Iron Bash when it is not G-Max, and can obviously Paraflinch things to death, which is going to be a ton of fun. Either way, I'm excited to use Sandaconda. It's a cool snake, dude. Design is kind of weird with the big old coil around its snoot, but whatever, it's a cool guy. And the last mon that I picked up, I debated a lot this Pokemon, but I ended up settling on Haunter. Reason being is that Ghost types are great this generation. There's no Pursuit. Knockoff is not as limited as it once was, but it's a little bit less common. It's a Levitator boy, so I'm not completely reliant on Mandibuzz switching into Earthquakes and whatnot. You know, if I'm a little bit ground weak, I can send in Haunter. But it's a trick user. It is pretty powerful. You know, it gets access to Sludge Wave and Shadow Ball. Things like Dazzling Gleam. Doesn't get access to Focus Blast like Gengar does, which kind of sucks, but again, I do have my checks to Steel type, so it's not all that big of a deal. It's just a cool little guy, you know, nice little low tier. I only had like 40 points left, which means I could only have gotten like the lowest tier, which is a tier 5. So I ended up going with Haunter. So we have 2 pre-evolution offensive Pokemon, but I think there are two of the better pre-evolution offensive types. But also gets access to like Sucker Punch if I need to. Having a Ghost type is also nice for spin blocking. Obviously, I'm not going to be taking hits like ever with this thing, but if I make a hard prediction expecting them to go for Rapid Spin and I go into my Haunter, obviously I'm denying the Rapid Spin, which can be big when I have various Stealth Rockers and I have various Spike Setters. But either way, that's Haunter. That's the rest of the team. Definitely let me know what you think of the team in the comment section below. I'm very happy with it. I think it's going to be fat and annoying, and I also think it has some sneaky good offense in there, not only with things like Dracozolt and Inteleon that are the obvious offensive things, but, you know, Roserade is great offensively. I think Raboot and Gigalith and Hitmonchan can be very good offensively. Haunter I'll bring a few weeks during the season, and I think it's going to put in a lot of work. It's got a good speed tier for this generation. It's got good dual stab. So yeah, that's the entire draft analysis. Let me know what you think of the team in the comment section below. Once again, my name is Monatui, and I will see you next time.